Have you felt it? That sort of quiet, constant humming in the background of your life? That feeling that the financial world you've always known is, well, it's shifting. It's late 2025, and you can't ignore the headlines anymore. Gold is smashing through all-time highs. Silver is making moves that have Wall Street analysts scrambling. Welcome to the Bullion Signal Podcast. This is the channel where we cut through the noise to help you understand the major shifts in our economy, protect your wealth, and maybe even thrive in times of uncertainty. And today, we're tackling the one big question that's on everyone's mind as they watch these prices soar.
Right? It's the first thing you think. Is this just another speculative frenzy, another dot-com boom or housing mania, destined to pop and leave a lot of people hurting? I mean, it's a perfectly logical question. History is littered with bubbles, so it's smart to be skeptical. But what if we're asking the wrong question? What if what looks like a bubble from the outside is actually the sound of an old system breaking down and a new one being born?
Because that's the core idea we're going to dig into today. This isn't just traders getting excited. This isn't just a hot tip spreading across the internet. We are living through a historic, fundamental reevaluation of what money actually is. The record prices you see for gold and silver, they aren't the real story. They're just the fever chart. They're the symptom of a much, much deeper transformation that's already happening all around us.
To really get what's going on, you have to be able to separate the signal from the noise. You know, the noise is the daily chaos. The hot inflation print, the Federal Reserve speech, the jobs report, it's all the stuff that dominates the headlines for 24 hours and is forgotten by the next week. But a signal is different. A signal is a deep, clear message that the underlying rules of the game are changing for good. And right now, the signal coming from precious metals is so loud it's practically shaking the windows.
You see, the forces pushing gold and silver higher aren't temporary. They're not going to disappear when the next quarterly report comes out. We're talking about huge tectonic shifts, the kind of geopolitical changes that happen once in a generation. We're talking about a complete breakdown of trust in the currencies we use every day. And, believe it or not, we're talking about a regulatory floodgate that has just been opened. To really understand this new world, we need to break it down and look at the three giant pillars that are holding it all up.
All right, so pillar number one is the one you can see most clearly on the world stage. It's a direct, intentional, and incredibly well-coordinated challenge to the 50-year reign of the US dollar. For our entire adult lives, the dollar has been the bedrock of global trade. Everything was built on it. Well, right now, that bedrock is cracking apart.
For a long time, the word de-dollarization was kind of like a fringe conspiracy theory, something you'd only hear about in obscure corners of the internet. Well, guess what? It's not a theory anymore. It's now the official stated policy of a massive and growing group of powerful nations spearheaded by the BRICS alliance. And they are not just talking about it, they are actively building an alternative.
And just so we're clear on the scale of what we're talking about here, this isn't some small club of discontented countries. Look at this. The expanded BRICS Plus alliance is now home to 45% of the entire world's population. Let that sink in for a second. We're talking about nearly half of humanity collectively deciding to build a different financial path for themselves. This is a monumental shift. Now, population is one thing, but economic power is what really matters. And this is where it gets really interesting. When we look at economic output using a measure called purchasing power parity, which basically ignores volatile exchange rates and just looks at what countries actually produce, the picture is stunning. The economic center of the world has already moved. As you can see, the BRICS Plus bloc of nations now produces more goods and services than the entire G7 combined. This isn't a future projection. This is the reality on the ground today.
And what do you do with that kind of economic muscle? You build your own system. They aren't trying to reform the old one. They're building a totally separate, parallel financial universe. They're launching their own payment networks, like BRICS Pay. They're building new settlement platforms to bypass the old SWIFT system. It's like they've decided they don't like the rules of the old game, so they're building a brand new stadium right next door.
And if you think this is just a bunch of press releases and fancy plans, Think again. This number right here is the proof. Right now, as we speak, over 65% of the trade happening between the original BRICS countries is already being done in their own currencies. They are actively, deliberately walking away from the dollar. And every single time a barrel of oil or a ton of copper is sold without using dollars, it creates demand for something else to settle the trade, a neutral asset, an asset that isn't controlled by any single country. And throughout history, that asset has always been gold.
So that external pressure from the rest of the world is massive. It's a huge force, but it's only one side of the story. Because at the exact same time the dollar is being challenged from the outside, the entire Western financial system is starting to decay from within. And that brings us to our second, equally powerful pillar, a deep and growing crisis of trust.
You have to remember, our modern monetary system, our fiat currency system, isn't backed by gold or anything tangible. It's backed by one thing and one thing only: faith, confidence, trust. Your trust that the dollars in your bank account will be worth something tomorrow. Your trust that the people managing the system know what they're doing. And that trust, well, it's evaporating right in front of us.
And you can see this battle playing out in the open. Just look at the situation in Italy, a founding member of the G7. The democratically elected Italian government has made the argument that Italy's massive gold reserves, the third largest in the world, belong to the people, that they're a tool of national sovereignty to be used in a crisis. But the unelected bureaucrats at the European Central Bank have pushed back hard. They say that gold is a central bank asset and it must be kept away from so-called political influence.
So let's cut through all the fancy language. What is this fight really about? It's about one simple word: control. Who gets to decide what happens to a nation's ultimate form of money? The people who are elected? Or a group of unelected technocrats? This isn't just some political drama in Italy. This is a battle happening everywhere. It's a symptom of the collapsing trust in the institutions that have managed our money for the last 50 years.
And what this crisis of trust does is it forces every one of us, every single person trying to save for the future, to make a conscious choice. There are two paths forward. Path one is to keep all of your faith, all of your wealth in fiat currencies. Currencies whose value can be changed on a whim by political decisions you have absolutely no say in. Or there's path two, to place at least some of your wealth in hard assets like gold and silver. Assets that have held their value for thousands of years precisely because they exist outside of that political system. Okay, so we've got the huge geopolitical shift happening outside. We've got the crisis of trust rotting the system from inside. Either one of those would be enough to create a once-in-a-lifetime bull market for precious metals. But now we're adding a third factor, a catalyst from right inside the United States that is like pouring jet fuel on an already raging fire. To get why this is happening right now, all you have to do is look at this number: $38 trillion. That's the U.S. national debt. It's a number so astronomical, it almost seems fake, but the consequences are very, very real. Everyday people are scared. They see this debt, they feel inflation every time they go to the grocery store, and they are terrified about what it means for their retirement. They are desperate for a way to protect themselves, and Washington has finally been forced to listen.
And the policy response has been stunningly fast. I mean, look at this timeline. Just a few short years ago, in 2021, the Department of Labor was actually warning people against putting alternative assets in their 401ks. Then, bam! In August of 2025, a landmark executive order completely flips the script. This wasn't some minor tweak. This was a clear, direct signal from the very top to change the way Americans are allowed to save.
And we need to be crystal clear on what this means for you. The new rules are explicit. They open the floodgates for commodities like gold and silver to be held inside mainstream retirement plans. For the very first time in history, there is a simple, legal, and officially blessed path for millions of regular Americans to protect their hard-earned savings with physical precious metals right inside the 401ks and IRAs they already have. This is a complete game changer. Now, stop and think about the sheer scale of what was just unlocked. There are more than 90 million 401k-style retirement plans in America,
holding trillions upon trillions of dollars. For decades, a giant firewall has kept that ocean of money away from physical assets. So what do you think happens when you remove that firewall? What happens when you point a fire hose of trillions of retirement dollars at the tiny, finite, physical market for gold and silver? It's the most basic law of supply and demand you can imagine, and the result is bound to be explosive.
So now, let's just take a step back and look at the whole incredible picture. When you put these three massive, powerful forces together, all happening at the exact same time, you start to realize that this isn't just another market rally. This is the birth of a completely new financial order.
Let's just quickly recap these three unshakable pillars. First, you have the external shock, the geopolitical fragmentation, where half the world is actively building a non-dollar system. Second, you have the internal decay, the crisis of monetary distrust, where people are losing faith in their own currencies. And third, you have the regulatory catalyst, the sudden unlocking of trillions of dollars in U.S. retirement funds, now free to seek safety in hard assets.
The most important takeaway here is that these are not fleeting news stories. These aren't trends that will reverse next year. These are deep, structural, permanent shifts in how the world works. They are the new bedrock of the global financial system, and they are all converging right now, creating a powerful and, more importantly, a lasting tailwind for real, tangible assets that you can actually hold in your hand.
So you see, the question is no longer if the world is changing. It has already changed. This new financial order isn't some distant future possibility. It's being built all around us, right now. The only real question left is for you to answer. Knowing what you know now, how are you going to position yourself, your family, and your wealth for the reality that is already here? Thank you for tuning into the Bullion Signal Podcast. If this analysis was helpful, please do us a favor and hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and share it with someone you think needs to hear this message. It's the best way to help us grow the channel and get this crucial information out to more people. And as always, a quick reminder. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not financial or investment advice. You should always do your own research and consult with a professional before making any financial decisions. Your financial future is your responsibility. We'll see you in the next episode.